Okay, so basically today what I want to talk about is us building our foundation and what we've done with our Stony Brook University parking and transportation. When we started this, we wanted to obviously create the roadmap of what we were going to be doing over the next several years. So that roadmap, while windy, we wanted to identify the challenges, build the team, meet with stakeholders, invest in resources, transition services, launch our changes, and then come to one campus and one operation. So again, a roadway, right? Straightforward, maybe a few wines here or there, but always moving forward. Instead, the reality is that basically our vision, right, is one campus, one operation. And all of the other things are kind of circling around that concept. And they bounce in and they bounce out like balls. So you might go from identifying challenge to investing in the resources, back to building a team. So it's kind of all over the place. The roadmap is double backs and curves and goes one way and the other at all times. And quite honestly, it feels more like we are just hanging on for dear life. And those things are always constantly bouncing one way or another. So when we looked at our challenges, what we found is that we had insufficient data for decision making. And a lot of this came because we had decentralized operations and we had aging technology, or in some cases, no technology at all. We also had a lot of our major maintenance needs that needed to happen and had not been happening. We had financial instability, and the reputation of the department was not great. So the first thing I wanted to show is kind of this picture that I presented back in 2022 when I first met with you guys, March of 2022. And this is what the organizational structure looked like. So there was a director for transportation and parking, and he oversaw the automotive. And then there was a parking manager, which oversaw the contract for our admin garage management. But then you look over at our manager of busing, and technically that our transit system and our enforcement system was under the police department with a dotted line to transportation and parking. Our business operations were under facilities. The East Campus, which is our hospital campus, operated on its own. And then the Bursar actually did all of the permit sales. So again, a very decentralized structure. This is what we look like today. So if you see the red, that is our transportation and automotive, so our fleet services. The green is our business operations. The orange is our IT. And then the yellow is our traffic appeals board chair. And then the blue is our parking operation. So as you can see, a much different picture from 2021 to 2023. And I will say this hasn't come without its challenges. Things have changed here or there. So the Traffic Appeals Board chair was under the police department. We wanted to create a separation. But then as we tackled things like Part 584, our legislation, it just made more sense for that individual to report directly to me. So then as we built the team, we knew we needed to rebrand our parking and transportation office. And so with that, we all sat around the table, actually around a whiteboard, and tried to come up with all different ways and to name our operation. Stony Brook, I don't know if the rest of you, but Stony Brook is big on acronyms. So we needed to come up with an acronym that would stick. And so knowing that our industry has gone more towards mobility and talking about mobility, we went with mobility and parking services, or MAPS. And that was introduced in June of 2022. Part of that, though, was that we wanted to make sure to have a tagline of what we did and what we stood for. And the big pieces of that was we kept talking about infrastructure and we kept talking about the community. And so we created our tagline of our infrastructure for community connections. And of course, you have to come up with the new logo so that we can put it on all of our uniforms and everything else. But I will say that while we weren't sure how quickly this would take off, right away people picked up on the MAPS acronym, and it's become something that everybody knows what it is. So part of what we also wanted to do was change our image, going back to that reputation piece of it. So we started getting out there at some of the spring events and the fall events. And one of the first things we came up with was the Get There Fast, Get There Safe, partnering with our UPD to talk about our live bus tracker and then the Guardian app. And then we went through, and our school buses, so our transit buses, were all white school buses. And so we decided it was time to get those wrapped and really represent the university. So when people came here, they knew as those vehicles were traveling around, they were in Seawolf's country. So then the other thing we wanted to do was, from an enforcement perspective, is let's try some different ways of helping individuals out. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of our changes that we had, but in fall of 2022, we made a major change. And so what we did the first week of the semester was we put these postcards on individuals' cars that were in the wrong spot. So basically saying, let's get you to the right spot, giving them a QR code to the map because they were in maybe the wrong space, or they didn't have a hang tag, so taking them to the website so that they could get one. So we did this. We always did warning tickets, and we experimented with just doing this for the first several days, and then going to the warning tickets and then to full enforcement. What we found out is we actually handed out like 1,000 of these in the first day. So we actually had to order some more to have them ready for the next couple of days. But in talking with the enforcement staff, they felt it was really important to still have the warning ticket because a lot of people could just disregard this. So now we do this in conjunction with the warning ticket those first several days of the semester. So you guys are here to get the update on our parking landscape. So in spring of 2022, we announced some changes for the commuter students coming fall of 2022. And what that was actually the reintroduction of what we called our commuter premium permit. So if you were here the last time, or you heard the last time or not, basically on our West campus, our academic campus, there was no paid permits. So we had visitor parking, but then our faculty, staff, and student permits were free. And what we found is in the core of campus, we had a lot of competition for those commuter spaces, of course. We had about 600 spaces. So what we ended up doing was reintroducing a concept that they had had several years before, but got rid of during the COVID time period. And that was a commuter premium permit, which allowed you to park on the core of campus. And then if you didn't want to pay for a permit, you parked in our satellite lot, which you guys will see later. So the big announcement here was that we were reintroducing paid student parking for the core of campus, but we also doubled the number of spaces in the core of campus for commuters. So then in fall of 2022, we also began new bus routes to support our medical campus. And this was in preparation because in December of 2022, we began major renovations on our medical academic garage. And what this forced us to do was actually move out every student that we had in that garage and put them in our satellite lot. So we wanted to make sure that we had a bus route in effect that would be able to support getting them to that campus. So then in February of 2023, we announced our new proposed parking plan. And what this was us going out with a proposal for paid parking. So all faculty, staff, all students, you would pay for a permit. So anyone with a permit would be paying, and then we would still have our visitor parking. However, in the state of New York and with the SUNY campuses, we are required to negotiate any changes to parking with the different collective bargaining units. So when we announced in February of 2023, we met with those individuals before the announcement went out to let them know it was coming. And then we actually sat down and started having discussions with them in May of 2023. So then quickly following that, in June of 2023, we began hospital garage renovations. And so between the medical academic garage and the hospital garage renovation, that's about $30 million worth of work that needed to be done. We basically are completely replacing the top decks on both of those garages and then doing a lot of support work as well. So that required us to move faculty and staff away from the medical campus and put them out in our satellite parking. So at that point in time, we added additional transit support. We created a bus route that ran from that lot directly to the hospital during the key morning times and afternoon times. And then we also offered a overnight transit option with our valet services. So they run a van to be able to get individuals out there. If any of you work with hospitals, you know it's very difficult. It's not like your standard parking. You have all different shift schedules. You have individuals that pick up a lot of overtime. So over, I would say several months, we kept changing and tweaking that transit support to the point now that we have 24/7 access to that satellite lot from the hospital from Sunday at midnight, or I guess Monday morning at midnight through Saturday morning at 6 a.m. So then in March of 2024, we announced, so just last week, we announced additional changes because we are still in negotiations with the different unions. We have not made any changes to the faculty staff parking. However, we have identified about $5 million worth of work that we need to do in the student parking areas. So the changes that we announced, we felt we needed to move forward was that we would create different tiers of commuter student parking, because one of our challenges, and you'll see this if you go on the tour, is we have some parking by the stadium, and then we have parking over by our railroad station. The railroad station parking is a little further away, and what we found is the students that bought the premium permit were not happy because they kept saying we oversold, they couldn't find a space. It was just because they did not want to go over to that railroad parking lot because it was further away. So we had plenty of space over there, but they preferred parking by the stadium. So part of our change for this coming fall is that if you want to park what is truly the core over by the stadium, that price went up a little bit. And then we created a commuter perimeter permit, which is the railroad station parking. So that price went down, and then we kept our satellite parking free. The other change that we made was for residential students. Residential students have not paid for parking, but we are implementing paid residential parking for fall 2024. And that will be at that commuter perimeter rate. We also opened up, so residential students have never had access to anywhere other than residential parking. But with this change and adding the fee, we opened up the we opened up the satellite lot to have a residential satellite parking. So that will be free for them. However, part of that is them understanding that we do not have 24/7 access to that lot from the residential areas. However, we do only enforce in these parking lots from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. So they will have access to the residential lots outside of those times, which we felt was, we had initially proposed changing those enforcement times, but with the slowly rolling in this plan, felt that we did not need to make that change at this point in time. So, as you can see, between spring of 2022 and March of 2024, we've made a lot of changes. I've been doing a lot of work, and still more to come as we continue those negotiations with the unions. So, going back to that lack of technology and the aging technology, we've been working hard to bring all of that in. So, the parking management system, we had an in-house system, and currently we are in an implementation for a new system. And the hope is that we will have that complete this summer so we can test it, make sure everything's good, so that by fall 2024, we are fully immersed in that technology. That includes permit management as well as enforcement using mobile and fixed LPR. So then the pay stations in our visitor lots, currently we are sourcing those as well. And then we're looking at mobile payments to bring that in sometime in fall of 2024, which would allow us to do daily parking in some of our lots as well as event parking. I don't want to not talk about our other areas. I know this was about our update to our parking plan, but really it's a holistic approach. So our fleet management system, we're in the RFP process now. Our automotive services, we do have in-house mechanics, and right now we're using a data warehouse software, which does not give us a lot of information, and it does not help the university plan financially for when vehicles need to be turned over. So we are in the process of that, which George, I am sure, would be happy to talk to some of you about, but because we're in the RFP process, obviously there's not a lot of discussion we can have on that. We're also looking at, we're at end of contract for our fixed route transit bus system. So that RFP will be coming soon. And then we will also be doing an RFP for an on-demand system. And this is really important for us because right now our paratransit services are basically you schedule for the semester, which we would continue to do with an on-demand system. But anybody that needs a one-off ride has to call in, and then we have to fit them into a 15-minute slot on a piece of paper. So what we really want to do is go with an on-demand system that will help us be able to provide quicker and better service to our customers, as well as through this be able to limit or decrease the number of vehicles that we're using for this service. The other thing for on-demand that we would look at in the future, hopefully partnering with student government and campus residences, is offering a true late night ride system. So right now, our late ride is offered through UPD, and they can only do it as they have people available. So there may be wait times when that service is needed. So our hope is with an on-demand system in that somehow we can create a new late ride overnight shuttle. So we still have a lot to do. Right now, we are looking at, we're in the process of a NYPA study for electrifying our fleet, which is looking at our grid, as well as giving us recommendations on a schedule of replacing out our vehicles for the EO22 demand. So that's one thing that is of concern, I am sure, to any of our partners that may be in the room from universities or other state entities. So changing out our fleet, including our buses by 2035 or 2040 is going to be challenging. We also are in the midst of procuring a company to help us with consulting team to help us with a campus master plan. The good news is that, as you know, parking tends to be the last thing that people think about when it comes to putting up buildings or making changes. But with this, they understand how important it is for maps to be at the table as they're talking about how we want to move forward in the future. We are also transitioning to transit style buses. We have mostly school buses at this point, and George will tell you how much I hate the fact that we have school buses. But one of the reasons that really we want to change is accessibility, and being able to offer those services to anyone that wants to be able to use them. We are looking at trying to get onto another state's contract to be able to do this, because currently New York State does not have a transit style bus on contract that meets our needs. We also are looking at investing in our micromobility infrastructure. So if, as you travel around our campus, you will notice we have a lot of sidewalks that end into nothing. We have a lot of individuals that use our bike path, shared bike path, as pedestrian walkways, bike pathways, scooter pathways. And obviously that is of concern as you have e-scooters or e-bikes, which really should be on the roadways. But then if you look at our roadways, are they really the safest for individuals to be using those modes of transportation? So this is an area that we definitely are invested in, trying to figure out a way to create a safer campus, but finding ways that people can use all different modes to travel around. Also looking at expanding our transit operations. So what I mean by this is we currently do outsource some of our services. So for instance, we have a Southampton campus, and so we have outsourced the transit operations to get students from West Campus down to the Southampton campus. But we're actually going to take that in-house for several reasons. One being reliability, but the other being that it would be something then that students could track through our fixed route system. We also are looking at LIRR and how we can partner with them, since we have a station on our campus. And then also looking at Suffolk County and how we can better partner with them. So Maslow, for those that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but he does have this quote which says, in any given moment, we have two options: to step forward into growth or step back into safety. I will say that we are leaping into that growth. And some that definitely has come with its challenges. All you have to do is hop on Reddit and you will see that. It's been challenging for our entire team. But what I will say is that if we can look back to the changes we've made these past 2 years and then look forward to where we're going to be 2 years from now, that our operations will be completely different from what they have been, which is really, truly exciting for us. So let me get out of that sharing and come back on. I think I got that timing wise right down to the wire, 1 minute over. But I did want to offer, if anyone had any questions. It's a very high, very generalized overview. I understand that. We have George in the room and Ephraim in the room who can give more details if you have questions about specific things that we're doing. But otherwise, happy to take a question or two if there is time.
We'll take advantage of the people in the room. Thank you, Kendra, for joining us from your vacation in Myrtle Beach. I wish I were there.
It's beautiful. It's nice and sunny right now.
Yeah, so a lot of what Kendra spoke about, we're going to point out on the campus tour, and we have an army of Stony Brook representatives here today. So any questions about transit, parking, anything about the plan, the transition, the technology that's coming, we'll absolutely be able to field any of the questions that you have. And I'll help keep this on track for our next speaker. Thank you, Kendra.
All right, thank you all.